Welcome to Wisdom Woman podcast. I believe that is in constant change and growth, not in perfection, that we find happiness. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking with top performance professionals about tools, techniques, new ideas on how to develop your communication skills, use your creative thinking, be a team player, manage your tasks like a pro, be motivated, become an expert on relationships, and a problem solver. Everything you need to be 5 stars in all areas of your life. My intention is to help you develop your skills and find balance between your professional and personal life. My name is Bettina Meyer-Flug, and I hope I can be your trusted advisor. Do you realize there are certain situations that are repeated in your family, in your life? In this episode, we are bringing an exciting topic to discuss. It's called Systemic Constellation Coaching. In a Systemic Constellation session, the facilitator and the client work together to uncover hidden dynamics and adjust elements to find movement towards solutions. Insights come quickly and have an immediate effect on thoughts and actions. By seeing the elements of the system in relation to the issue, the client is working on it already. He gains both rational and intuitive information that will help him along the way. The systemic constellation revealed that our behavior is shaped by our family and our environment influence, creating a system of beliefs and habits in our life. As a result, we constantly receive positive and negative influences in various areas of our life. Therefore, methods such as this one brings new perspectives to light and can enable you to safely test responses to a situation and refocus effort to reinvigorate essential relationships. To discuss such an important topic, we invited one of the best coaches in Australia, someone super specialized in this field called Karen Tweedy. Karen is an international recognized executive coach and a former president of the International Coaching Federation, ICF, here in Australia. Karen's unique approach to coaching is informed by a systemic mindset, seeing an individual in terms of a broader system they inhabit. She has studied systemic mapping and systemic constellation over several years. She has over 25 years of experience teaching, consulting, coaching, and facilitating within various organizations and industries. So I'm very blessed to have her here. Welcome, Karen. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Bettina, for asking me.
So I mentioned on the intro that you had an important role at ICF Australia. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about the purpose of this amazing organization?
Sure. As I mentioned when we chatted before we began recording, when I first began coaching in the late 1990s, I was, as far as I knew, the only person doing it. It was very new in those days in Australia. And I found that by searching online and trying to understand, how I could learn and make sure my standards were of very professional level, I came across the ICF, the International Coach Federation, as it was in those days. And I joined my local branch and got to know the people in my community who were also interested in coaching. And then over the next couple of years, I got more and more engaged. I became a member of the local board and then the Australasian board, which took in New Zealand as well. And then within a few years, I was elected onto the global board. So within about 6 years, I think, I became global president, which was, a great honor and a wonderful education and a great way to understand, leadership across cultures and so on. And the role of the ICF was and still is to make sure that the standards of coaching and the profession itself is recognized and has consistent standards across the globe, and that there are international ways of accrediting and building a wide network of coaches that connect. And that's how we know each other. So it's certainly working from my perspective.
Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing that. To also include my comments about ICF. I'm really impressed with the amazing work ICF is doing all around the world. For those who know a little bit about my story, I'm originally from Brazil, and I know that ICF is doing and playing an important role over there. Recently, I was living in the United States for 7 years, and I was very involved with ICF Colorado. In Colorado, they have an amazing initiative to support nonprofits, and nonprofits is one of my passion. I'm involved with a program that they have over there supporting nonprofit internationally. And we, as a group of, I think, 50 coaches, are coaching some international nonprofits. And I have one in New York and one in Cambodia. So it's an amazing program. ICF is doing so much. So when I came here to Australia, the first thing was I asked my group in ICF Colorado, who is the best coach in Australia that I can connect. And by chance, Caddy was also passionate about constellation. And that's why, Karen, sorry, that's why we're here recording this podcast. So Karen and I have a passion for coaching and passion for systemic constellation. So, Karen, tell us about your background as a coach. I think a lot of people are curious to know us a little bit. So, when you
Yeah.
talk about your career, I think you're going to bring people closer to you.
Oh, well, I certainly hope so. I began as my first career was teaching, and I did that for about 5 or 6 years, I think, and decided probably working in industry, I'd be able to use those skills more broadly. So I think from the mid-90s, I began training and facilitating and consulting in large corporations around communication, just ensuring that, the best sorts of communication was going on in organizations. And I really loved it. I felt I was very good at it. And I really missed the fact that so often in organizational work, you present a report or you run some sessions for people, and you never know if it's ever going to be picked up, if it's ever going to make a difference, if anyone's going to use it. And just at that time, I learned about coaching, which is so much about how do you apply what you've learned? How do you take action in ways that support you and improve the efforts you put as a leader or what you're looking for in your own career? So that to me was another lovely marriage, where those two things came together. So bit by bit, I started to include some element of coaching in all the work I did. And to this day, it's probably now, a half or more of what I do is clean and pure coaching. What about you, Bettina?
Yes, I started coaching in United States. I used to have a marketing company in Brazil and dedicated 20% my time pro bono helping nonprofits. And when I arrived in United States, because my husband was transferred by his work, I had a chance to start from scratch. And the first thing I did was to hire a coach. And having conversations with this coach, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my professional life. She said, "You can do anything you want." I said, "I want to work 100% with nonprofits." That's my passion. I want to do that. And she helped me out with that. And it was amazing. I spent, I think, 4 years in the United States supporting nonprofits grow as a mentor. And then I came up, a friend of mine who's a coach explained me the big difference between mentoring and coaching. And like you were mentoring organizations, and you said it's important to coach them because when the idea comes from the client, it makes a huge difference on the actions they take towards changing anything in their lives. So I decided to specialize myself in coaching. I was already a facilitator. I said, okay, now I'm going to be a coach. And I've been coaching for the past 3 years. I love doing this, but I was feeling stuck because living abroad and moving countries is not easy. And I used to attend to systemic constellation sessions in Brazil, and I learned so much. So when I was feeling stuck in the United States because of this connection to Brazil, when I was unable to feel confident with the language there, was a constellation session that helped me get unstuck.
Mm.
And I did this with a Brazilian coach, and I said, I need to learn that.
Mm.
So I started studying systemic constellation, and this has been helping my clients every time that I'm in a coaching process and I have the feeling that they are stuck in something. We do a systemic constellation. How about you? How did you start working with systemic constellation?
Well, again, it goes back to ICF. In my leadership role, one of the great benefits I had was to attend the EMCC, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council's end of year conference. So, EMCC is a sister organization to ICF, and we had reciprocal invitations to the leadership to attend the conferences. So, that was a wonderful benefit I got. So I went there and I attended a session. A European coach I was with said, "Look, come and see this session." And it was a constellation workshop run by John Whittington from the UK. And I watched him work with a coach who had a corporate client who was really stuck in something they were doing. And he facilitated this session that was just the most eye-opening and amazing thing to witness. I was just immediately struck by its power. I had no idea what had gone on. You know, it is such an incredible experience to attend a constellation. But I made a decision right there and then, I'm going to find out, how to do this. So really, once again, back to ICF and the great connections that it offers coaches.
Yeah, and I think working with systemic constellation is a never ending learning process.
Hmm.
I did a certification of 18 months with one of the best facilitators in Brazil called Mario Coziner. He has more than 30 years of experience in this field, and he never stops learning. Every process, we are still learning. And the big challenge for a coach is that we have to work on our issues first before
Exactly.
start working with clients, and this is a never ending process as well. So I keep doing constellations for myself and keep learning. But for the listeners who doesn't know what systemic constellation is, Karen, can you summarize what is systemic constellation for them?
Yeah. Um, well, I guess to step back a little, that it's based on a couple of things. One is that largely people rely on what's above their shoulders to work things out. They use their brain and they think. The rational facility of a human is given far greater um, credit than any other sort of knowledge or knowing. Um, the the work of constellation taps into the whole body awareness that we all have. That feeling when you walk in a room and you think, gosh, something's gone on here, or gee, what happened? Or when you're standing somewhere and you just feel someone standing behind you, even though you've not seen them, or you get the idea that someone's looking at you and you turn around, of course, someone is looking at you. So all these deeply ingrained natural ways that we know um, over and above our rational knowing is tapped into in the whole constellation process. So, first of all, the notion is that any challenge, any opportunity, any situation has certain elements in it. It's made up of pieces. There are parts to it. For example, if I was thinking of a goal I've got, then there's the goal itself, there's the resources I've got to go for that goal, which are elements of that system. And there's the things that might get in my way, like the obstacles I've got. There's my idea of what might come after I get the goal. There's my idea of what's keeping me stuck right now and what might be a good idea that I don't go for that goal. So everything I've mentioned right there is an element of my system for wanting to achieve a goal. And so if I can externalize those by what we call setting them up or representing them outside of me, so mapping them on a space, maybe that's using people as pieces to map my system. Maybe I use little figurines and I do it on a table and map it. In just setting that up in a way that's a felt sense, not overthinking it, but just popping those elements out, I get an image and I see in front of me all the stuff that's been churning around in front of me, so inside me. So the very fact of externalizing that and seeing what it looks like is revelatory. All of a sudden, we're not caught in it. We are, or it's not caught in us. We can view it, look at it from various angles. We can move certain pieces and understand it far better. And that's true. I've just used a goal setting idea, but it could be if we've got an ongoing challenge with a family member, with a loved one, with someone at work, or we're stuck in a job we can't seem to get any leverage. Anything that we might find ourselves in is capable of being externalized and mapped so that new perspectives can be seen in it.
Wonderful. I think you really clarify people about this topic. What I would like to share with everybody is a little bit the story of how the systemic constellation started. So the person who invented it's called Bert Hellinger, is a German, and he was a psychotherapist. He started his career after the Second World War. He decided to be a priest, and he was sent to a mission to Africa. And in Africa, by doing his work as a missionary there, he noticed that all the decisions taken in Africa were done by family, based on family, and he thought this was very powerful. So he was observing this dynamic for years, and he had some conflicts with the church that he used to belong. So he traveled back to Germany trying to expose his points of view. And he saw that it didn't match the way he saw things have to be done and the church that he belonged. So he decided to leave the church. He got married and started working as a psychotherapist in Europe. And he had several teachers. He tried several techniques. And after several years, he noticed that three main pillars appear in every session that he did. And those are the main pillars of the constellation education. The first pillar is that every member has the right to belong. When someone is excluded from the system, someone else is going to represent this exclusion. This is something he noticed in several years working with different therapies. The second pillar is that balance is super important. This movement of giving and receiving, gaining and losses is a constant in our lives. So we need to search for balance constantly. And the third pillar is the hierarchy. Each individual of the family or the organization must understand their own place where they belong, respecting the time that they are participating in this system. So by learning how to reorganize this and observing those three main pillars in sessions, he was able to help so many people. And he was working on himself as well. And by participating on the Second World War, he had several impacts in his life. So he did the work himself. And I have a big connection with him because my family also migrated after the Second World War to Brazil. So I know how it felt, this war, the impact it had in so many families. That's why I'm very triggered by the potential of healing so many things by seeing the situations in a different systemic. And I'm very happy that we're doing this work together, Karen, bringing more awareness and spreading this work here in Australia. So, acknowledging that a lot of people have problems like that, um, how do you think a constellation session can help someone bring awareness of the origin of the problem?
So I guess it's really the same way, when we're talking about that, the notion of a goal system. Very similarly, imagine, because it's only one way to work, that we worked with a group in a room where a person would come with an intractable issue, something that's been going on for some time and something they feel very deeply about. They would work with a facilitator. So let's say that's me. Though my role would be to get really clear with them what it is that they're looking to receive as a result of the constellation. And it's my role to make sure that it's a solution-focused intention for that. So something they really do want, not what they don't want. So I would work with them so that we fashioned a really good outcome for the constellation. And as I'm listening and questioning the participant, the client, I would be starting to get a sense in my own mind of what or who might be the elements of that system, of the system that they're presenting to me. So I would question about that too, to understand where they are in their family, what their marital situation's like, something about their family of origin, just starting to get a sense of that. And then I'd invite that client to look around the room at the other people who would be there as part of the constellation process and invite them to take on a representation of those different elements. So what we would find is, say, for instance, it made sense that the person's mother and father, their partner, and maybe a previous partner was included in the constellation, and maybe there's a couple of children that are also involved. So my client would choose, invite representatives for each of those elements in the system, and then we work through a process of positioning those and seeing what pattern emerged from how they are in relation to each other. And the beauty of doing it in a workshop setting is that my client and I can walk around that system, can see it from different angles. It's a little bit like walk a mile in my shoes and you'll understand better. And that's the whole holographic representation that a face-to-face constellation process can offer, is really valuable. So once that mapping's done, that's sometimes, there's a lot of information in that. And then knowing, as you said, those three pillars, Bettina, we're able to then, as facilitators, see where there might be an imbalance, or, where hierarchy is not being respected, or someone's clearly missing. So through a process of slow and deliberate movement, we would find ways to make that system whole again. And in witnessing that whole process, the client is moved, sees the solution in front of them, feels what it's like when things are in balance, can step into that system in their own place and experience wholeness and connection, can step out again and take another look. So there's so many wonderful opportunities that presents when working in that way.
I love your description. Yes, I really loved, and I admire you being a facilitator, because I know it's not easy. We need to be very grounded, centered, and really an observer, and have our intuition fine-tuned to be a good facilitator for a systemic constellation. It's not a plug and play session. And it's very powerful when we do in a format of workshops, having people present and sharing this experience is a learning process for the person who brings the topic, is a learning process for everybody attending, even the observers, even the facilitator. We learn from every systemic constellation process. There are different types of systemic constellation. What Karen just described is the workshop format. There is the possibility to do individual constellation sessions and also online. I prefer in person because I think it's stronger, but all of them work. Can you give your perspective about doing workshops and also individual constellation sessions? What is the difference between both?
It's funny you say that, Bettina, because it makes me think, well, have I got a favorite child? Like
Yes.
I've got 4 children, and some of them are much easier to get on with than others, but I wouldn't say they're favorite. They present their own ways of being that one has to fit in with, or to build a relationship that way. So one of them you choose for, a laugh and a conversation. Another one, makes you really think, and another one, is fun. And so I guess you're saying that, right? Face-to-face definitely is the richest, because you can, as I was saying, step in and out actually. Whereas online, I've done it with in Zoom calls and so on, where people take on representations, and even if they're only in that grid, they still can inhabit the roles and give great insight as to what's happening in the different places. Using floor markers. So often in coaching, I will invite the client to make space on the room using markers and step into those places themselves. So there's, each of them is wonderful and they belong to the same family, but have their different characteristics. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yes, I think it's because I'm still suffering from the impact of COVID. I'm missing in-person things. So the opportunity to be around people, I get it. But I really can feel the benefits of both online, in-person, individual, and as a group. But talking about benefits, what are the main benefits of a systemic constellation?
Well, I was saying earlier, from my perspective, it taps into your somatic wisdom, your felt sense of what's right, and you can get insight on a very deep level that way. When it's only going in your head, it takes a while to trickle down to the rest of you. But when you're, in an experience where you have a full body experience of something, it's not easy to forget that. It's sort of made an impact on you. And you get that felt shift, all of a sudden, it's like your head shakes, and you think, oh, I completely, my eyes are open. I can see something different. I feel what it's like. And when, something like that shifts, when one thing shifts, everything shifts. Our own bodies are a system as well. So I think that's a key benefit. And what might take, 8 coaching conversations can be done much more quickly in a constellation, in a way that talking about it and logically discussing it and so on, it just doesn't afford you.
I agree with you. Yes, in my perspective, the main benefits is doing the trip between your head to your heart. This 30 centimeters between your head and your heart is a long way. And when you start a session, you feel, when you're a client now, you have certain feelings for the situation that you're presenting. At the end, you can feel everything solved. How you going to feel after everything is going to have a different dynamics. And it's such a good feeling that you're going to do everything possible to get there. So all the pieces started moving, and it can take like months and years for this to happen, but you know the destination where you're going with the situation. So this new perspective, feeling the consequences of the new perspective, is the main benefit in my point of view.
Yeah, I agree.
And in what context a systemic constellation session can help?
Oh, well, so many. um, as we've touched on already, family issues, career issues. I find I have a lot of individual clients looking for a shift in career or something along those lines. Um, in a corporate setting, even considering different marketing strategies, um, thinking about how best to structure the organization. You can actually lay out and map out the whole organization and where the different divisions of the organization sit and how they interact with each other. You can look where the blockages are. Um, uh, in some quarters, people look at health issues. So, really it's only limited by our imagination, really.
Mm-hmm. I think to clarify to our audience here some benefits on or how can we apply. Can you tell us some stories of clients and how you apply this in real life for them?
Yeah. I was thinking that I might bring an example to our conversation, and really, having mentioned that career um, constellation, I think that's probably a good example to give. So, one particular client I had, and this particular client, I did a one-on-one, and we used my floor markers where together they identified their issue. We got it to a point where we were clear what we wanted to accomplish. I suggested the elements we map, and then my client placed them just in a felt way, without overthinking, but just put them in the floor in the space we had available to work with. And her issue was just how to move from paid employment into running her own business. And, we looked at what it was that she wanted to accomplish in her own business, the sorts of things she wanted to do. And, I was encouraging her to think of what would be happening, when it's really ticking over fantastically. So she had a vision of herself with a group of highly engaged people and varied work and so on. So that was the goal we set up. And then we looked at what were her obstacles and what were her resources, actually in the other order. We looked at what she had working for her and what she didn't, what she felt were getting in her way. And what was interesting was, as we worked through it, her resources were enormous. She had her years of experience. She had a fabulous network she could call on. And she had, good basis financially for beginning that, some buffer in to allow her, 6 months to make sure she was established. And on the obstacles side, it was very interesting that she had, some self-doubt, and she had some, getting out of her current employment. And I forget the third one, actually. But as we look at each of those resources, we begin to see, well, maybe where would that resource best sit in relation to the goal? Which one do you want to call on first? How do we arrange them? So finding the way that she's most supported by those resources and can access them. And then when we looked at the obstacles, it became clear that maybe they weren't obstacles. Maybe they were resources that had, finished their useful life. And they can often tend to go back to childhood experience, so a bit of caution could be a very good resource that you're not going to do anything reckless. but if it's overused, it becomes an obstacle. So just I supported her to have the right sort of relationship with those obstacles so that they did keep her safe and didn't get in the way of her taking the steps she wanted. So we organised those in a way that the system had her supported, and she then stepped into it. She stepped into the constellation herself and stood on the goal and experienced what it was like to be there with her resources and obstacles in the right position for her support. And within, I don't know, 2 months, she had set up her business and she's been running it for the last, I think, 4 years now. I still get her, her LinkedIn notifications and so on. So that was a very successful one for her.
Wow, wow. I can share a story also of a constellation that I participated. Was incredible. The guy presented his topic, a problem that he had, that he couldn't hold on to money. Every money that he earned, he lost. He couldn't save. He couldn't buy his house. He was always making money and losing money, making money and losing money. And he wanted to understand this relationship with money. And once we started running the constellation session, and we could see a family situation that happened when he was a child. His parents were not together, and his father was in another state. So he and his mother left to move to another state, and his father stayed. So during his whole childhood, he felt unworthy of having a father. So he was pressured at school with peers that he have a father present in his life all the time. And because he felt unworthy of having a father, he transferred this feeling of unworthiness to his relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
And after seeing this from a different perspective, he could understand why his mother did this move, that his father still loved him, that he had this support, and really change his perspective of the family relationship and also his relationship with money. And after the session, by following up, we noticed that his dynamics in the family changed, and also he started to thriving professionally and was able to succeed. So this was a very impressive constellation session that I participated in. By being an observer, you learn so much because we can relate with those situations in our lives as well, that we feel unworthy, and I learned so much. So this was a very impactful one. I did one for myself as well. I had a big attachment for a land that I heritage from my father, and even not using this land, being a big land in the nature in Brazil, I was holding on to it and sell it. So I did a constellation just to look at my relationship with this land, why I was holding on, and I was able to figure out that I don't need this land to realize my dreams. So I empower myself with the support of my parents, my family, to move on and move here to Australia and follow my path. And now things started to flow over there for my siblings, everybody that's around this area, and really open doors. And I'm feeling totally different in relation to this land that I own now. And I wish the best for the next owner to come and manage this place. So constellation can change lives. I can tell it's changing mine. That's why I'm so involved with it. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Now, I love what you said too about the example of the money constellation and the example of you with the land, is that when a greater awareness, presents, when you realize that you maybe have transferred, attention or relationship from one thing to another, and you resolve that, not just that resolves, but so many other things connected also become unstuck, flow better. That's the notion, isn't it? It's about love flowing, and connection flowing is what constellations unleash.
I agree with you. I think there is important need to clarify for people is you said that you can unstuck things with a systemic constellation faster than a coaching session. Can you clarify what's the difference between systemic constellation session versus a coaching session?
Well,
or process, I can say, because it's not a session, it's a process.
well, I guess so. Though, just to maybe answer that slightly differently, I know quite often I will use a systemic mapping, which is really the first step in a constellation, as a way to start the coaching. So I'll use that as an introductory session. So what might take me, 4 or 5 sessions to get to know about a client, I've already got a real insight, as do they, of the system they're embroiled in, that they're wanting coaching around, and the connections it has to other systems in their lives at the very start. And it can be a great way to hone in on where the coaching needs to go. So that's a fast tracking element of constellations, but they work very well together. So it's not that in working in a constellation, the facilitator takes the lead. As you were saying earlier, the idea comes from the client when you're coaching, and that's the power of it. And the coach can probe or inquire or be curious about things. And similarly, when you're looking at a map of a situation, the coach can also, the coach/facilitator, can be equally as curious, and to say, look, I'm wondering, when you look at that, what do you see? And if you stood over there, and had a look from that perspective, what else are you aware of? And if you were going to make one small change that would improve what's happening, where would you move? So it's still a light touch, as coaching is, though it's working, as we said, with far more of the person's faculties, not just their ways of thinking and imagining in the conversation, but in being, having a bodily involvement in the elements of the system being discussed.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I also use the constellation together with the coaching process. So I start coaching a client, and if I feel they're stuck in any kind of topic, we do a systemic constellation, unblock that, and we continue with coaching. But let's explain people what happens after the systemic constellation session.
Well, that's a really good question. I reckon that we should share. Given that I've said a couple of times in this, and I know you're agreeing, because it's your experience too, we're looking to support people to move out of their heads so much, and to pick up the information that their body's offering them. So having done the constellation, people have got insight, they've had a felt sense of a shift. When they leave, the instruction is, allow what you have gone through to work on you. Don't you work on it. Don't go away and write a whole lot of notes. Don't go away and discuss it with everyone. Don't go away and tell people what happened. Allow it to have its effect on you. And I give my clients the instruction, don't talk about it for 2 weeks. And I said, though, what you might do is what's come to you. You might go for a little walk, and on the beach, you might get a stick, and you might draw something that symbolizes something that's come out of it. You might play some music and allow it to have an effect on you as you enjoy the feeling of what you saw in that constellation. When you've had a really lovely night out or a great meal or something, and the next day you get a little wave of reminiscence of what that was like, or you've been to a wonderful concert and you think, oh, the feeling comes again. So, it's sort of like that. Allow that to come to you and, touch you in a great way, and resist the, the need or the desire to go back and analyze it. So that would be it. And then I encourage people to have their next session a fortnight later, where we start to just debrief. What's starting to appear? What are you noticing? How's it playing out for you in the real world? So just to enjoy it, as it works on you. And differently if you're working in organizations, because it's sort of usually at a different level of importance. It's not about life and death as families and relationships can be. In the corporate setting, maybe what's revealed needs some planning and some goals around it, and some tasks allocated to people and plans made. So they can be different depending on where we're working. How do you find that you like to finish up?
I agree that it's important not to go out and start talking with everybody about it. It's just keep this feeling and processing the learnings and everything that you took out of the session. But I feel the impact. It's not only after 15 days. This can take months or even years, because the new configuration of the solution situation involves other people. Everything that you do in a systemic constellation somehow impact all the members involved. And this takes time to reverberate in the world. So it's everything quantum physics, but
Yes.
I think we need to let this reverberate in the universe. So this takes times, and like any solution, it's incredible. It's transforming, and I think you all should try it. So that's why Karen and I are planning to do a workshop here in Melbourne. We're going to post all the details on the description of the podcast, and you can participate as an observer, or you can participate by bringing your topic. We're expecting a group of 12 to 20 people to attend to those sessions. Our intention is to provide this monthly, so you can attend, you can learn from it. But if you also feel the need of doing something individual, you can contact me or Karen. So Karen, what's the best way if people want to get in touch with you?
So you'll have, as a listener to the podcast, access to all sorts of contact information. So I'm easily contactable by through LinkedIn, or through my email address, which is karen@ktc.coach.
Thank you. And the details of this amazing workshop for Systemic Constellation will be described here on the description of the website, but you can find information on our website, witchy.tech. We're going to have a specific page for you to enroll on those events. And keep tuned. We would love to have you around and help you solve your issues. Thank you, Karen, for your time. I know time is the most precious things we have in our lives. I love that you took the time to be here with us and share your amazing knowledge.
Thank you so much, Bettina.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom Woman Podcast. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews. To give us suggestions for future show topics, please write to us at podcast@witchy.tech. If you're interested in having me as your trusted advisor, schedule a strategic coaching session on my website, www.witchy.tech.